I can barely hear you. See if I can turn you up. Now I can try again.
No, now, it was on my webcam instead of in
Ah,
my headset.
yeah, now I can very clearly hear you.
Why it keeps doing that is a mystery.
Huh. Well, that's a mystery you'll be more likely to solve than me. Ooh, you all good?
I'm all good. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Good stuff. Good stuff. I think be interesting to see where we can end up off the back of this, given that Leggy gave some very useful feedback, which is actually quite handy, to be honest with you. With a bit of luck, it makes the conversation easier as well, actually. We shall
I mean,
see.
I'm relatively on the same page as Leggy. I think my concerns are slightly different, but I think
Yeah,
Leggy's concerns are also in the same direction. But yeah, same
yeah, I
but
think
different.
that's completely fair. But it's fine because I'm pretty sure we should be able to bust a lot of that quite easily, but we shall see. The question is, how long do we give it until we start? I can see some key players in the audience. Zezon, for example, Lennon, Joker, Mauler as well. Okay, and yourself might have a sufficient number here, actually. But first thing I would say is for those that have joined, I was originally thinking I'd share my screen, but given that Arctic, you very usefully shared the Word doc on the event, I was thinking actually I would just speak through, to be honest with you, and then we can discuss thereafter. Okay, right. What I'll do is, Lemon, do you need to start a recording, or is it a case of it already being recorded from the get-go? Does anyone know the answer to that? Let's have a look at member chat. Actually, that's a good point. Is there, because I'm not familiar, this is the first time I've used a stage. Is there any, let's have a look. Is there a chat link to this? It looks like there is. I actually need to get it up. All right, there we go. Excellent. All right, thanks, Lemon. Nice one. Okay, all right, we'll crack on because everyone has stuff to be doing with their day, I'm sure. But welcome, everyone. Obviously, really appreciate you joining. Not the most exciting meeting in the world, but important nonetheless. The meeting really was just to go over and I'm going to emphasize very initial proposal for introducing some light touch governance or structure or whatever word you want to use into the world of Zero Hour. There is obviously, it's fairly limited right now, and I think really the main thing is just the aim in my mind is to just try and centralize everything as insofar as possible, whilst also not trying to go too far that it then brings up some concerns that Leggy referred to earlier. Um, so I think we already have like an example of that in action, and admittedly, I've only seen limited amounts, but I know that super hackers have some good things in place. So I think that actually we could learn quite a bit from what they do, whether or not what we are able to then, if we're able to transpose that across or into other things or not, I don't know yet. We'll have to obviously go over that. But yeah, in any case, I think it's just a bit more important to get some structure in where possible following source code release. I mean, I know there's everything to do with super hackers. Can we apply that across other areas, things like generals online, the tournaments, game replays, just trying to bring everything a bit more closer together if we possibly can. And I think, yeah, it's just trying our best to obviously centralize everything. Let's see what we can do there. Um, what I'd say is governance is obviously a bit of a scary word, so I've just been using that as the word. It doesn't necessarily. I think Arctic made a fair point. Obviously, everyone gets a bit put off by that word. Maybe something like structuring is a better one, but ultimately, that's really the aim here. So what I'd highlight, a couple of things before I just go over the document is I'd highlight that whatever we do end up setting up, if we do set up anything at all, there's obviously no saying that it will work. I just think that we need to try and give something a go. Obviously, you need to remember, and this is really important, that everything is just voluntary, and so the level of what we're trying to introduce here is not going to be something like nothing like company, nothing like that. As Leggy said earlier, ultimately we are a gaming community, so everything we do just needs to be proportionate to that. Everyone's volunteering, everyone's spending their own time trying to ultimately aim for one thing, which is making 0 hour better. And obviously, if we do try to embed any form of proposal, whatever we end up embedding, they might even end up as guidelines as opposed to any sort of strict rules. So really, at this stage, the key thing is anything's on the table, to be honest with you. That covers just a brief introduction I was going to do. What I'll then quickly go over is the documents that I initially wrote up. Now, obviously, the purpose is fairly straightforward. It's just trying to introduce some sort of structure or governance, whatever you want to call it, into 0 hour. There are some benefits to that. Leggy mentioned a couple earlier. I think just, if anything, just trying to introduce a framework for decision making, increase transparency, improving communication, introducing a little bit of accountability, and of course making sure everyone's voices are heard, and ultimately just trying to introduce a little bit more control. I'm not going to say some control, because there certainly are controls in place now. Some I don't even see, I'm sure. So really just a case of what can we do to improve on what we've already got. And cross collaboration is certainly going to be key to this. Now, really, I think with this, the main way in my mind that we'd go about this is just by introducing some sort of committees. And the structure of that committee is on the second or the third page of the document, depending on how you're looking at it. This was purely a proposal. It might, if we end up going down the route of introducing committees, it might look absolutely nothing like this. I think this is just one example. And the logic in my mind is you've got a load of subcommittees. Those subcommittees can, they'll vary a lot, obviously, in terms of their size, what they actually cover. Some of these are just examples. We might not even introduce like a sponsorship committee, for example. That might not exist. It's purely an idea. Super Hackers Committee clearly already exists. So whatever we do there is great. And the idea is we have all these subcommittees and then just one that oversees those, essentially. In my mind, that was how we would go about it. I'll just take a pause there, because I think it's important, first and foremost, to ask the question of everyone. A, do you think that actually having any form of committees is useful? And bearing in mind that the committee, any committee that gets introduced doesn't have to be something like, everyone thinks it might be something that will be a big time drain. It doesn't have to be. It can be a case of one document that covers what they do and occasional minutes from the odd meeting that they have here and there. It can be as little as that to something much more enhanced, like probably what the super hackers do, for example. So yeah, any initial comments, whether that be through the chat or if you feel free to talk as well. Although I think don't you have to be invited to talk on this? It's kind of, I'm not sure how it works.
Yeah, people can request to talk, and I'll let
Yeah.
them right in.
Terrific, thank you. So Peckerman, seems like we already have that in places. Would be good to know where, actually. If we do, then that's brilliant, because it would be really useful for my own site. Actually, that would be very handy. I'll obviously just take pauses. Yeah, Dominator's Discord. Yes, obviously this Zezon is now speaker. Zezon, hello.
Hello. Oh, I don't want to say anything now. Just continue.
Sorry. Yeah. Apologies. Just at the right time. No problem. Okay. Is there anything else at this moment in time? Noting, obviously, Peckerman, your comments there. Yes, we do have the servers. That is true, and that's fine. Maybe that ends up being the answer. Maybe rather than referring to committees, maybe the answer is we have, say, super hackers, which is obviously covered in community outposts. Maybe you've got your patching committee also covered here. Online committee, maybe I think that's kind of where Dominators, that's the sort of direction he seemed to be trying to go in with his own server. He seems to have completely rebranded that. Yeah, exactly that. Generals Online merged with Dominators. So that's essentially what that's come, really. And then obviously anything else off the back of that. You could argue like a mapping committee probably already exists. I know that Zezon has done some good work on that over the years as well. And then I know that obviously he has the process of onboarding ranked maps, for example. That itself is something that already exists as well. I'll just give a tiny bit more time for a few comments to come in. Revora before. Yeah, essentially. Or at least that's my understanding. And I know that there's plenty of work there. There are like 1 to 3 big mapping discords around. That's great. There you go. See, so that's already covered as well. So a lot of this is just proof in the pudding. I mean, I personally I've been around quite a long time, and yet I only see a shred or like a really small how do we say subset of what this community actually has at work. So maybe actually, and this is an interesting thought, maybe the answer here is just having one single document that says, by the way, all these discords exist, because that would actually be incredibly useful. I'd be interested to know people's thoughts on that actually. Sounds like Peckerman is on top of it though, which is great to know. It's good to know that there's someone that is aware of all of these. That just shows I had no idea that they existed, for example.
Maybe
Yeah,
we
maybe
can make
just
some sort of portal where all these communities can be found, right? Because
yes.
maybe that's also part of the problem with the collaboration is that maybe some people don't know what other people are working on.
I think that's a really big issue, and I think if that was solved, then well, everything I'm proposing goes in the bin, frankly. So I agree with you there entirely. Just wait for a couple more comments to come through. I appreciate that talking is much quicker than writing, as I'd know. But yeah, Peckerman is listing a few undead as well with General's Hub. Can believe the place that unites all discords, a hub for everyone. So okay, that's useful to know that there's something there that's a good suggestion. I mean, there's even an argument that like you could have one single game replays thread that could list it all.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like it needs to be an how do you say, like a impartial
Yes,
thing where anybody can just get whatever they want.
that's
Like if they
probably
make it
that's probably fair.
generals, it shouldn't even be a Discord server. It just should be a web page where they can find
Yeah,
things.
I agree. I think I agree with you that it would be better if it was on one web page. Of course, then if you do have that one web page, you then have to decide on who you know oversees and looks over that. Obviously, it has to be someone that has knowledge of all that stuff, which I suspect there's quite a few in here that do. I know I don't.
We can make it open source on
Yeah,
GitHub where basically anybody can request to get their Discord or forum or what have you added.
yeah, agreed.
I don't think it should have its own Discord because that will just fracture the Discord environment even further. And what would the point be?
Yeah,
Pekkaman?
I think. So I just want to. I'll come back to the briefly. I just want to see old analytics comment there, which is he's right. Information is, and it might even be the. I'd argue it's the main issue. Obviously, says on didn't know what Generals Online is, and then obviously the mappers. There's a lot of that going on. A lot of these things can indeed be sorted out, and yeah, ultimately, yeah, we do work in the same direction. You get some information missing, and that kind of is it. That's kind of what I'm truly trying to do here. I think just even having awareness, not necessarily being like a contributor. Everyone can obviously have the ability to pick and choose where they go. If you're a mapper, you're obviously going to find the mapping discords very, very useful. You're going to find this Discord very useful, for example, if you're working on the patch, because you've got the dev general is incredibly active, for example. So yeah, let me just repack them because what a lot of people here think is possible. Yeah, I think interesting point. It is risky though. I think setting up another one from scratch, because you obviously already have community. I think community out. If there was going to be one centralized, you'd probably work off of community outposts, or at least I personally would. That'd be my opinion. Unless you think, of course, it's not fit for purpose, in which case you then have to think what you'd do there. Yeah, it seems like the direction of this discussion is quite clear. It's all about trying to work out the info. Where is the information? Where can people go? And where can that then take them? It's just centralizing and communicating is definitely going to be the key here.
I mean, if it's just a website that's completely open source, just on GitHub, where anybody can submit a pull request and it's transparent, like who has requested their website to be added and who has rejected it, I think that's much more clear and impartial of a system than having a Discord, which seems kind of, I don't know, someone has to maintain that, and it's not transparent to everybody what's going on as well. I think that's also one of the problems that we have.
Yeah. Okay. So in your view then, if we're going to do something in terms of having a one information source place that everyone can then go to, I think you're suggesting it should be some sort of website, right?
Yeah, or even just a wiki on GitHub, some that doesn't look clean. I guess if you're just if you're not a developer and you have to find your way around that, that might not be really nice.
Yeah.
I mean,
Agreed.
just a simple list of resources with like a description, like this is my community, generals related, this is what we do, and then uh, a button to either join the Discord or a link to a forum like Game Replays or what have you.
Okay, that might be a good idea. So I just want to quickly pick up one thing. Peckerman, I noticed, said people associate with Legionnaire's Discord, which is interesting. I mean, I know that Leggy, obviously, he was one of the key players in setting it up, but actually, I personally view it as what its initial, shall we say, aim was, which is for it to be a community Discord. And personally, that's the way I see it. But it's interesting that there are people that think differently. And Zezon, just quickly, the presentation for governance done. Obviously, I got to the point where I got down to the initial proposed structure, and off the back of that, we're then essentially agreeing from that actually the key is just this might already exist, just in a slightly different form, and the direction of the conversation really is now how can we centralize the information and how can we make more people aware of what exists. But it's good to see the conversation in chat. Obviously, anyone with any thoughts, feel free to come through. But yeah. Yeah, I agree with Tanso's point on that. Let's see.
Okay, if I may say
Yep.
some. So I'm a bit confused. I was expecting a bit more substance to the governance idea. I mean, so I'm probably not as opposed as Legionnaire made it sound in his statement towards governance, because to me it sounds like this sounds reasonable, but I don't really yet know what you envision exactly and how this would play out and what they focus on and how the procedure works. Like, how are these action items for governance created, and where do they live, and what is the time frame to decide on these action items, and what happens if no one acts on these things, like how does this work? And so for me, like, this sounds like a rough idea to try to bring people together, right, which sounds reasonable, but it's probably also very difficult to do because communities, they want to do their own things. And
Yes.
from my experience, so over the last 4 years, I have tried to bring people together and try to work towards creating a patch with some and some not so great success, right? So like it's really difficult to motivate people to actually contribute
Yeah.
because I think obviously one of the problems is that with our work we never had a release because we never were in a state where we would actually have something ready that the user can then play because we were not satisfied, right?
Yes.
So obviously if there is a product, then it's easier for people to chime in on this and then get more involved. But if it's only theoretically and they don't really can touch it, they cannot test it, right? Then it's hard to like be involved. And I think this has been the reality in the past where there is this abstract GitHub page with discussions and people don't really know what they discuss for in the end because they don't know if it happens or not, right? And then
Yeah.
and then you have like different people, they want different things, like which of course you can already see in the way that people create different kind of patches and different kind of mods with different directions, right? Someone's balance patch looks like 1.06 from 15 years ago, and another one looks like Russian community patch 1.05 with different kind of things in there. And then you have like these mods or half mods, half patches like End Project, and then other like Shockwave who change more things, and then others who do like total conversion. So like you see, like people create different kind of things, and you have like different communities evolving around these things. So I suspect what you want to focus on probably is governance for the core multiplayer. Is that correct?
I think that's probably fair, Zezon. Yes. Which makes the most sense.
I think that makes sense because ideally we would not want to go in a situation where we divide the community into even more smaller chunks, right? So right now
Agreed.
the status quo is that the original EA game is still the go-to game, right? Like all the community patches and most of the mods, they are not populated as much as the original game, right? So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say all the projects have failed, but they weren't able to capture all the players, right? So the ambitions were never large enough for these projects, which probably also was because it wasn't technically possible to like create an experience that would really excel above the original, which obviously now is entirely possible. So it was difficult in the past, but now it's possible, and it's inevitable because the original game is is trash, so to say, technically, right? So things must improve, and they will improve, right? And working towards a governance that can make decisions and make everyone happy, I think would be great, but it probably will be hard because you will have different players that have different agendas and different goals. So to give an example, like if you talk with expert players, like they have a very specific view on the game because they play at the highest level in the 1v1 tournaments for big prize monies, and they play a lot of hours, and they play always the same game over and over, and they enjoy it, right? And so they have a very specific view on things. But then you also have new players, right? Who like the casual experience and who are not that great. And the casual players, they might like to have more units or new flavors, new factions, right? Whereas the pro players, they might stick more to how the game has been for 20 years, right? So you will have like a wide spectrum of players who want different things from it, and we somehow have to find a way to make everyone kind of happy, right? And since we don't have any authority where people say, oh yeah, this person will make the best design decisions. Like, we don't have this. If we had a person like John Day, I think, what is his name, from Dominator's Dev interview, who was the original designer of, all the factions, like, if this guy would call the shots, then it probably could be reasonable to get everyone behind that, because that would be the original designer of the game.
Yeah.
But as long as we don't have such an authority figure, we need to negotiate in ways, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
if we can make this work, great. It will be hard.
It will be very difficult. I do agree with you, and there's obviously plenty to digest there. So thank you, Zezon. But yeah, it's an interesting case. So obviously, and I'll come back to this. I'm going to come back to this point a lot. The proportionality is a really key word for me here. Now, just to clarify, what I mean by that is the effort put in to anything that aims to be introduced should be just linked to the importance of it. So, for example, obviously the super hackers work is super important, probably the most important work going on at the minute across the entire community. And so naturally, it's probably that's why governance of some sort or structure is especially important. Whereas that same sort of level of importance would also probably be levied against, say, the distribution of the online of the patch, for example. And then ditto, you've got the online community, or what some of the work that X64 has been working on recently, that then also has obviously some pretty material importance to it. And those, I think, are the key. I mean, the other stuff kind of follows. Something like mapping, for example, follows pretty naturally and should just fairly seamlessly work across. So I think that's, in terms of governance, that can sort of deal with itself. But in terms of what do you need the umbrella for, in my initial proposal, essentially you've got this one umbrella committee. Where do you need that for the most? I think it's a combination of the patching work, what super hackers are doing, and also the online community. Because I'm pretty sure I've seen a few comments going around that, for example, suggest that you've got a situation right now where the online generals online would not be compatible with what super hackers are working on, which obviously might be okay in the end, because maybe the idea is you have one thing, you have another thing, and you then integrate them later. But then maybe that's not so good, because that would be wasting time. That falls out of my remit and my knowledge, admittedly, but it is something that I would be immediately concerned about. So I think it's something that we need to think about, definitely. So really, if we, oh, hang on, it is compatible. Okay. That's interesting. That's good. So there you go. See, yeah, exactly. The internet's a dangerous place. But yes, okay. That's good to know. I think that's probably the most, in terms of trying to get the most important links. To me, that's the most important link that we need to think about. I don't know if anyone agrees or not, though.
I mean, the thing that I'm kind of concerned about is, for some questions or some topics, there might be multiple correct answers, right? And
True.
at the end of the day, it's still an open source game. So
Yeah.
if somebody disagrees and wants to go their own way, well, there's not much we can do to stop them, per se. Is that a bad thing? Well, it just means that we have one less developer, or how many people are going the other direction. We have
Yes.
we lose X number of developers to some other feature that maybe not the majority agrees with. But I think that's unavoidable, and that's why I don't want to say I'm against governance, per se. That's why I was more leaning into, maybe it should be, it's more like we need to have some sort of overall structure for, like, where the majority of the stuff is going. But I
Yes.
think everybody's opinion is valid, and well, if they want to spend the time to work on that, well, it shouldn't be necessarily discouraged. I mean, I see a lot of people commenting on like, oh yeah, balance change, this, that. I mean, we're not really at the stage that we're going to look at balance changes at the moment, but
Yeah, I
I,
agree.
I mean, that's one of the things that comes up. And at the end of the day, I think having a few options is not necessarily bad, as long as we try to find a way that all these different options can coexist in such a way that people don't get fractured online, right? So if there's
Yeah.
like one balance, for example, or one multiplayer online system that is being created now, Generals Online, and somebody else has another idea, like what if there's some sort of overarching system that allows them to still coexist and for players to still find each other, be it through Discord or whatever, right?
Mm.
It doesn't need to be perfect, and I don't think it ever will be.
Agreed. So
Historically,
yeah, after you,
from my experience, there are always 2 points reason for contention. One is controversial bug fixes, and 2 is controversial design changes. These 2 categories are there, and these will cause most friction across communities. And so from a developer perspective, like tackling those bug fixes that affect gameplay in ways, these are the most egregious ones, because from developer perspective, you want that things work the right way, but the player looks more at these things like, okay, how do I experience it? How, not necessarily like, is it actually the correct thing, the game to behave that way, but does it play okay the way I expected, right? So there's this topic, and then doing design changes is like, how much damage does this unit do, and how much does this receive, and so on, right? So these are more like, that the classical game designer would solve. But those bug fixes, this is something that will be pain points. And I think from developer perspective, from our side, is that our goal will be to technically be able to provide fixes for all these things that are controversial, but try to make them opt in or opt out for
yeah,
for mods and patches, so that whoever creates mods or patches can then decide, okay, do I want this or not, right? That takes a bit the burden off of us developers who implement the proper behavior, but we don't have to force it, right? So like the popular example is diagonal movement speed bug, and we know that there is interest to have this properly work, but there's also pushback against having this work properly, right? So
yeah,
I think we are well advised to provide the ability to opt in fixes or opt out of fixes. And this way, at least from developer perspective, we don't have to make this decision. We just fix it. And then someone who, in the governance structure makes those decisions can then say, okay, we take this or we don't take this, right?
yeah. That sounds sensible to me. And actually, then that's fine. So maybe that's where we need to focus on the most, and perhaps for the initial part of where we go down, we just focus on this very point, right? If there's going to be some sort of something a bit more concrete, maybe we just focus on this one single committee that is literally purely focused on everything to do with what you just discussed there, Zezon, given that that's the most sort of controversial changes. I mean, the bug fixes, for example, as you say, there's one. There's going to be several, however many examples there are that could be contentious, as you say. What would you say, actually? Just do you want to just give an example of one that would impact, say, the pro scene?
Yeah, for example, a popular bug is the GLA scrap denial,
Yeah,
right? Where you place the
yeah,
scaffold above the scrap crate and
yes,
then it disappears, right? So it definitely is a bug. and it's a bug that is fixable in the ini file, and players agree that this behavior of removing objects with scaffold is bad for money crates, but they think it's good for GLA scrap crates because they have adopted it in their gameplay, and they say it adds to the balancing so that GLA does not dominate the Chinas and the USAs maybe, right? So basically the reasoning becomes that a certain bug makes the balance fair of the game, right? And so you have the situation where the bug reinforces the balance, so you can't fix the bug because then it will break the balance, right? And so you have this dilemma, and it's really hard to solve because you first need to tell players, okay, can we fix it, and then maybe figure out ways to mitigate the the impact it has. So you need to have like this discussion, and it's hard to get there because there will be people who say no, impossible, right? So
of course.
I think some people, they do not have like they don't look further than the bug is, right? They see the scrap deny and they're thinking, well, if we remove that, the game will become unbalanced. Well, maybe that is the case, but then you also need to think a step further, like if that is removed, what else needs to change to make it balanced, right? I mean, it's, of course, it might introduce other changes,
Yeah,
but
it's a
it
very
might be
controversial
necessary,
one.
right?
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, the way put
if
it this way, right? And this is I'm just going to give one example of a view here, and shout if you disagree. But in terms of what the work that Super Hackers and Co are doing, in my mind, the aim is to essentially mimic what we already have in a new environment. Now, I could be wrong there, but that's the way I've interpreted the work so far, which of course means that although that is, the point on scrap is considered a bug, I couldn't imagine no scrap deno, for example. I couldn't imagine. I think
Could
that would
I
be
interject for a second about
of
scrap
course,
denying?
yep, of course you can.
Scrap deny basically at this point is a feature. If you go about patching it, you have to also introduce new behavior that makes it act like as it did. Because honestly, in my opinion, the patching scrap deny, I understand it like needing to fix everything, but at certain point, once a bug gets adopted as a feature, and it basically becomes integral to the game, it's no longer like a bug that needs fixing. It's a behavior that is sought after.
Yeah, and that's the key,
So,
right? It's
yeah.
trying to work out when you've got a list of bugs, and we're taking that as an example. We're taking scrap deny as an example of a bug in the game, and factually, it is a bug in the game. But then this is perfect because this is kind of a really good just example, and I think everyone understands this stuff better with examples. But ultimately, who then decides when it comes to this bug, if it's a bug that should run, when it gets fixed, it essentially gets ignored, or is it a bug that is going to be fixed no matter what? How is the decision making behind that done? And ultimately, that is kind of what I want to achieve here, right? Albeit probably through a totally different structure that I initially suggested.
I mean, it
But
kind
that's
of
the
goes
aim.
back to Sason's point earlier about like looking at it from the perspective of like the pro scene versus like the casual player.
Well, it's not
Like
only also the
imagine
pro
you
scene, it's also
no, but the reason why
kind
it's
of.
important to consider the casual players at the moment is, well, if you don't have more casual players joining the game, all the effort we're going to put in the coming period is going to be for nothing. If there's no new players, the game's going to die out anyways.
Yeah, but you also don't need to shake the foundation so that even the old ones leave. That's a dilemma.
Which is why maybe there should be options, right? What if there's a checkbox, for example, in the lobby? scrap deny on or off.
Maybe,
You
Yeah,
decide.
right.
but-
Yeah, there you go.
But there is a
Perfect. That's the answer.
problem there. What if I am a player that only plays with scrap deny, and I can't find a lobby with players that play with scrap deny, or vice versa? Then,
Well, then the
instead
community
of
has
splitting the
decided
community,
democratically. No, then the community has decided that democratically, in my
I
opinion.
agree with that. Yeah, if the players prefer then this one option because they can't find matches, then this functionality naturally dies out, and the players have chosen. And
Yeah.
I agree. It's an important point that
But-
like we need to be considerate about not just existing players, but also players that choose to not engage with the game because of certain behaviors. Now, obviously, like the the topics of the big bugs are obviously a big problem for player retention, right? If they crash and mismatch and disconnect and can't connect, and that's probably one of the biggest reasons. And like these bugs and balance things, they are not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of picture, and it's also not the biggest amount of work in the end. Like these balancing things and gameplay things, this is like a really small chunk of the work that we have to put into this game. Like we are looking at maybe 2, 3, 5% of total work. Like the most of the work is in infrastructure and code and like just bug fixing and fixing all the junk. And this is just the vast majority of things. So really, we are looking at like a small piece, but it's not an unimportant piece. So it certainly is worth to talk about this.
I think,
I would like to
yeah, sorry.
say something.
Of course.
So, I can see some of the comments about like letting scrap deny die out naturally, but it also, I would say, lowers the skill ceiling a bit, because even casual players, I've noticed, like sometimes there would be scrap denies in just casual gameplay, or like people would protect their units because of GLAs getting scrap. Like in DEF CON, a super tech is still a decent unit that can do a lot of damage. But a point I would like to make is old Valve from the periods of like the first ever Team Fortress. Rocket jumping was a bug that got exploited to make specifically maps for it, where you would just damage yourself and propel yourself forward or upwards to basically complete like a puzzle map. The devs at that time saw that and basically completely embraced the bug as a feature, and then developed the bug into a more stable state.
Yeah, fair point. I think, sorry, just to, in case people who are sort of dipping in and out or only just joining, I want to sort of remind people and make this clear. We're not, this conversation hasn't just descended into a discussion on whether or not, what we do with scrap deny. What we're doing is using that as literally our sort of case in point to then try and come up with what the answer is to this, and then essentially use that in a more general sense. We're just using that simply as an example, in case you were wondering why we were talking about something that might seem very off topic, but it's not off topic. It's just using it as an example that a lot of people can understand to then bring them back to the original point here.
You previously asked or said, like, are there more things like this? And I can tell you there are a lot of these controversial topics. Like in our, so not so much in our code repository, but in our patch repository, we have hundreds of these controversial issue reports and also merge changes. So there's a lot. And it can be small things and it can be very substantial things. And some topics are more contentious than others. I would say there are controversial changes that are probably easy to agree on, because there will be like more players that naturally will say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. But there will be some that will have significant pushback, especially from the pro players, right? Who do like the competition. They will be the most pushbackers. And I would expect the semis and the noobs probably not as much, because they maybe don't care as much about these small nuances, as long as the game overall plays similarly, right? They're probably fine, but obviously it varies, right? There can be also noobs that love how it is, right? But yeah, the most pushback always comes from the experts, and so if you want to satisfy these players, then you need to open dialogue and somehow get them into this governance structure. I don't know if they ultimately want to do this, right? So this is something you need to figure out. Do they want to participate in creating a patch, or do they just want to give opinions like they have been so far, or do they actually want to help design things? Right? This is, I think, is a fundamental question that needs to be answered at some point, because historically they always expressed disappointment or pushback, but they never or barely participated. I saw Dominator sometimes participating in some discussions on GitHub, but other than this, like Rising did some posts and Rage did some posts here and there, but other than this, I didn't see that much. Historically, I know that like in patch 1.6, there was like a committee of pro players who shaped the changes.
Yeah,
but
that's helpful to know.
Yeah, but these were like players, they are not active anymore. So it was, I think Spalding maybe was in there, people like this. So there was such an effort, but I think the product that they create is very different from the product that we strive to create. Our main focus is fixing the game, right? That first and foremost. Yes. And with Generals Online, you can see also, obviously, to create new features, like creating a new server, that creates a new home for the whole community, right? Like new features and fixing the game. These are like the biggest chunks. And then you have this, balancing and the governance for this. Yeah, I think it's a big topic. I would have hoped that we had more people in this call, like Dominator, for example, and maybe Xcal, and maybe some of these expert players who are have big opinions about gameplay changes. So I think there would be value in having these people in these discussions at some point.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. So yeah, I guess fine. Let's think this. So I know, and I'm just taking another example that I can think of here. So there was a 4 or 5 hour video on Dominator's channel, for example, that had Xcal, Marikar, people like that, just to discuss certain changes, right? I think there's actually what they call it, some sort of expert council meetings or something like that. And that admittedly went down. It goes beyond what we were discussing. This seemed to be focusing more on, actually, it was kind of like issues, wasn't it? And I'm pretty sure you had like a range of things from that. I mean, I don't know if Scrapped and I was on there, for example. Let me actually see if it was. 1 second. Where are we?
I think it was. I vaguely remember.
1 second. Trying to actually find it on Excel. It's kind of a bit of a pain fix. Scrap, generally quad, scrap. Let's have a little look. Fine. I'd have to dig further. But the actual idea, for example, of just do you have scrap deny at all, even is in itself the point, right? But trying to bring this back to the original aim of this. How do we then, and it's kind of great that we've used this example, because just going down that route alone seems to have generated a crazy amount of discussion. But for example, if we're taking that, what is the current trajectory of the super hackers? Is it going to be fixing the bugs as they are, and does that mean removing scrap deny? Or are we just going down the route of trying to mimic what we currently have? I guess that's kind of a question a key question to understand the answer to.
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, sure. Right now, and again, focusing on our example of scrap deny, what is the current direction or solution of super hackers? Is it to fix all bugs, and so by definition removing scrap deny, or is it to go down the route of, just as people put it, fixing the game, and think certain bugs like that are kept? I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to go down. And then of course we can then bring this back to discussing when we know kind of the current core position, I guess.
So we have two areas, right? We have the code and we have data.
Yeah.
So some bugs are buried in code and some are in data, or many are in data, or many bugs are in both places. Yeah. So from code side, as I mentioned before, we ideally only tackle these things in ways that they can be opt in or opt out, right? So there will be ways to configure this with, like in the ini file, game data ini, you can then set, okay, do I want this behavior for this thing or not, right? And so that means the classic mod or patch setup with the ini files that determines if a thing is fixed or changed or not, right? And so right now in the patch project on GitHub, there are a lot of controversial changes in the main branch right now. So the plan is when we go back to data that we disable or revert all the controversial changes that we don't want to be in a first release with data. So clean this up, disable the things, and so to keep it clean from like the controversial changes that would create this kind of contention. And then we would have to think about, okay, do we want to introduce some of these or not, right? And this is where the governance structure would then come into play if there was such a governance, right? So my initial hope was, since, Super Hackers partnered up with Community Outpost, that Community Outpost would, lead this kind of like content discovery for the content that Community Outpost then publishes based on the work that we provide, right? And then maybe what I'm fond of is that when Community Outpost publishes the products that we create, that we can get feedback directly from our users. So through GenHub, our launcher, that when people play our product, that there will be ways to give feedback, either as like votes, polls, or as comments, right? So that similar to how you leave a review on Steam, right? Where you say, I like it or I don't like it, and then you can write a comment, so that we get some feedback. And so that if we ask like, okay, how do you like this update or this particular change, that we can get some feedback on this. And if we see like a trend that community is not happy with something that governance has introduced, then this would also be a great way to look into this kind of thing again and correct it, right?
That's a feedback loop, exactly. Okay, thank you. That's very useful, and I've also noted Leggie's point very, very succinctly put as well, which is useful. Okay, that's good. So it sounds to me like, and I'm right in thinking and Mauler made a point here. All of these things wouldn't be changed anytime soon due to retail compatibility. And just to clarify for noobs like me, when we say retail compatibility, we mean someone who currently runs the game as it is on Game Ranger being able to play with someone that has the new patch, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, so technically our first release client is meant to work side by side with the original executables from EA, so that you just install it and then you just play along with anyone of the original player base.
Okay, that's what I thought. Nice. Okay. So, it sounds like the way I'm, relative to my original document on this and comparing that to, the discussion we've obviously all had today, which has been very, very helpful. It seems to me like if there's going to be a bit more, I'm not going to use the word, again, not using the word introduce, enhance. If we're going to enhance the governance or the structure or whatever we're going to do, certainly I think it sounds like a key is obviously just information sharing. That's probably the most important thing. And so I think we need to go down the route of having some sort of wide group, and maybe we already have it. Maybe we just need to enhance that a little bit more. But having some sort of group and within that group, having one or two people that are kind of a bit, their role is more focused on communicating it. And I think that's kind of going to be important. Now, obviously, that is a role that would be quite potentially strenuous, but I think it's super important. And I think that's the one thing we need to find right now. Because I know Zezon, in your case, and probably Mauler and some others as well, that you guys want to just focus on the on what you're doing, which is completely reasonable. So we just need someone or some people to get a bit more involved with the communication side of things, and that can be all the governance we require. It maybe we end up then developing that a little bit more further down the line, but I think that's where we're heading. I think.
I have a question. Do
Sure.
you think that governance mostly applies to these controversial topics on shaping like the gameplay of the product? Or do you think that governance also needs to account for new features and like technical matters?
That's a good question. I think. Can you answer that? Ask that again, just so I've got that right in my head.
So the most contentious topics with players are the controversial topics, that affect gameplay. But historically, they haven't been, I've never seen any pushbacks against new functionality or enhancements or some things that, don't impact the way they play the game. So I wonder if like governance needs to be reaching further than just the gameplay aspect, but also into like feature territory and how things are created and crafted, designed beyond gameplay.
It probably does. Yes, I think in a way, as the work that you guys are doing evolves, I think the governance maybe, or the structure or whatever you want to call it, maybe that just sort of evolves naturally as you guys are also evolving with your work, and then that's the route we go down, rather than trying to put something in place now and then immediately saying, oh well, that's that was a bit pointless. Maybe we go down the route of, oh right, this is the work being going on right now. We need this structure for the time being, but in say 1 year's time, let's pretend we're in a world where you guys have done your initial work and suddenly the discussion becomes about balance. Well, okay, we need to set up some sort of forum or committee or whatever you want to call it that then covers that. So then we just evolve it over time. And if we do that, I think the starting point is just trying to take what you guys super hackers are doing and just try and increase the information source and just try and make it a little bit clearer. It is very important, as Leggy just said there, that we are not touching balance. There is no balance going on right now. The work is purely fixing the game, and that is super important. I mean, I'm very clear on that, but I think you are, the misinformation is pretty scary and can go quickly. But yeah, ultimately that's what we're working on. So right now, what do we need to do better? I think the thing we need to do better is just get the flow of information from what you guys are doing to what everyone else can find palatable and more, user friendly. And we need to just improve that, I think, as a starting point. And then later on, you can then say, right, okay, well, we've done through that bit of work. Now we're going to go on to some much more controversial points. And actually that's going to need some more discussion and more forums and whatnot. So really, I think what I'm trying to say is the level of governance or the level of structure should be linked or commensurate with the level of controversy and what's involved. And right now, there isn't really anything overly controversial going on compared to what might follow in future. So for now, I think getting the information out there in a more palatable form is the key for the time being.
I think one of the other things that people do need to keep in mind, I mean, given that you've brought up misinformation, is some of the things that are being fixed
Yeah.
they have the potential to impact balance.
And
But
that's fine because that's ultimately that's what we need to be making sure we're very clearly
all those
you know,
things at
giving.
the moment are being flagged as such and
Yeah.
are being put behind feature markers, as far as I know. So
Okay.
it's not something that we're making a decision on for anyone. It's basically like we're giving people options.
Yeah.
Right.
Got it.
To be
And
decided
then
later is
fine.
basically the
Fine.
way we're handling it.
Okay, that sounds sensible to me. Yeah, fine. All right. I have an idea then. It sounds to me like I'll have a think personally about how I shape what we have, and we can just worry about something going forwards. I think I've got an idea in my head, and I think for me personally, I probably need to get a lot better at understanding GitHub, and in particular, viewing everything that's been going on there, because clearly all the structure or governance that or a lot of it that is in place right now certainly seems to be homed there. And I think maybe, or at least the way I view it, if we had someone, and whether it's whoever or multiple people, to get that information and what's going on into a much more user-friendly form, that would be probably just a good starting point, I'd say. Even if there's just a few updates from time to time.
Regarding a presentation of information, I think you touched on that earlier. We do have a wiki page on GitHub that is meant to document technical aspects, but also like development on a broader spectrum. So for example, it's in our organization, the Super Hackers / Generals Wiki, or I think the wiki is accessible in the code repository. And there, for example, there's a page where, for example, we link to other projects that currently also are in development, like, for example, Generals Online, right? So maybe that, like, the wiki page would also be a place to amend more information that could be relevant for broader audiences than just developers.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay. I think that's reasonable. Let's see if we could have to go beyond GitHub for this, to be honest. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the point I was making. Exactly that. Zizocom. Sorry, don't know how to pronounce your name there, but yeah, agreed. Something to think about for sure. Yeah. Okay. It sounds fine. For me personally, I think we probably are in a pretty. We are actually in a good place. I think we just need to improve the information publicly, and I think if we can solve that, and actually, I think that was something that Leggy pretty much referred to earlier as well. So if we can solve that as an initial step, then that's fantastic, and I'm happy to assist. I think it needs to be a multi people effort, but I'm happy to help out with that for sure. And if we can improve that, then we'll be in a good place, I think. So I shall have a think about it, and I'll also, if anyone wants to help out with that as well, be very useful. I'll build my own, try and increase my own knowledge of everything going on. I think in my head, the one thing that's would be super useful is, I referred to that expert council meeting that was in an Excel document the other day, and that I actually found the way that the information was displayed in that very useful, because you've just got one row per like issue or controversial change. One thing I think that would be good is listing, kind of categorizing by level of controversy, and just then maybe using that as a measure, because then in a way, like, the people are going to be most focused on the most controversial things. So if it's at the top of in terms of, you can easily put it in order and say, oh, there you go, those are the things I care about the most, then that alone helps.
I mean, that's sort of unless somebody has time to go through thousands of
Wow,
commits at
yeah,
this point. Like
yeah.
going backwards and trying to categorize every change, I think that's not a good use of resources.
Fine.
But I mean, we can definitely look at it, and if you need to get up to speed with GitHub, I'm more than willing to help
Yeah.
you with that.
I'm happy to help out. Maybe that's the answer then. We can have a separate conversation at some point, because that could be very useful for me. Not least to then try and think of some potential solutions to improving the information that gets out there. I think it's, I can tell that there is a lot of effort put into it. It's just one of those that is very tricky to get right, so to speak, and trying to reach as many people as possible. So something for me to think about, and for everyone actually. We'll get somewhere better, I think, at the end of this. So yeah, I'll take that away. Certainly, it's worth noting at this stage, my initial Word document, for those that have seen it. We can essentially, what I'm saying is we'll park that. Might not never come back to it. Might come back to it in future. And ultimately, we're going to focus on trying to improve we kind of are saying we already have a committee in a way for the super hackers, in the form of what you guys have on GitHub. So really, it's just a case of trying to see if we can make that a little bit more palatable for the typical person. And I'm going to try and see what I can do there. And anyone else that's able to help out is more than willing to help out as well. And then further down the line, when it comes to something like discussing balancing, that then will be reason to introduce more forums, more structure, a bit more governance, whatever you want to call it. But for now, because that's not happening right now, we don't have to introduce that for the time being. Is that fair? Would you say, Arctic or Zezon or anyone else? I'll take silence as a yes. Always easier. Okay. Fine. Is there anything else at this stage that anyone wants to bring up? And it can try not be too specific in terms of just trying to bring it back to the original aim of the discussion, as opposed to getting dug into some deep detail. Is there anything in particular anyone wants to mention? Old Analytics says yes, so I shall await that.
If you want to,
Yes, okay.
if you want to like speak, I can also add you to the stage. Just let me know.
Yeah, Old Analytics. Those names are purely examples and absolutely in no way fixed whatsoever. They are purely examples of people that I just knew off the top of my head would be examples of people that could be in that position, and absolutely in no way fixed. Very important to make that clear.
Yeah, I had a small question.
Sure.
I think a lot of people who haven't really taken the time to look at it think that Community Outpost does everything with the patch and they control everything. And I was just wondering, like, is there going to be a separate thing made for this patch? Is there going to be a website, or is there going to be made a server where people can ask outside of the GitHub? Because I feel GitHub is quite hard to get into for a lot of new people who haven't really done anything with GitHub before.
Just to clarify sorry, after you.
So the product will launch on GenHub, which is a new program for like presenting it in browser. I mean, there could be like a new website also, and I suspect it will be shared in Discords and by mouth. So I don't know. I think distribution is something that a community outpost should handle and organize. Yeah, and maybe other parties who want to distribute. I mean, in the end, the way that GenHub is supposed to work is that like publishers have the power to author how they publish things. So like we as developers, we don't tell anyone how they can publish the things, so everyone can do it, and we hope that that the publishers can do a good job of like providing a like publishing their works in a nice way to all the users. And yeah, ideally, I think the hardest part will be to like build this new ecosystem to get like the people and the publishers, the players, the publishers in there, so that we eliminate the disconnects between all the contents there are, right? So right now, players will not go to ModDB to find this mod, right? They won't go to gamereplays.org to find that map or patch, right? So we need to provide an easy way that people can discover these things. And if we manage this, then I think it will be easier to bring community close together. And then it will also be easier to have the community self-govern, so that there's no like central authority that, you know, is a definite pusher of all the content, but that the community decides like, what do I want? And community can easily see, okay, I have these options and I go to the best option, right? So that is probably the desired state, right?
Of interest and question from myself. So patch distribution obviously is, as you say, a very important point. I guess the most powerful one that I can think of, and I'm pretty sure is the obvious one, is GenPatcher. I suppose the only question I have then is GenPatcher geared up to distribute that? I assume it is.
The idea is that this new GenHub is going to be the replacement for GenPatcher.
Right. Okay, that's helpful to know.
I mean, GenPatcher can do it, as Legion had mentioned, but there's GenHub has a few advantages over GenPatcher.
Essentially, we try to deprecate basically all current things. We want to deprecate GenTool and GenPatcher if Legionnaire wants to abandon it. I mean, in the end, it's his decision, right? We want to deprecate the need to host it on ModDB or on Gen Launcher or via GenTool downloads or somewhere in forum posts. Like all these distributions, they are just scattered all over, and it's not good. It's a bad user experience, let's say. I mean, it's good that it's somewhere, but it's a bad user experience. And so, like, if we can consolidate into one place that no one owns, but everyone controls, that's the idea. Like, we don't own GenHub. We just create it. That's it. But then the publishers, they make it their home. And if then players have like one place to go to where they can access all the publishers, and it all interacts natively with the game the way it should, without any technical hurdles and not hard to understand, then I think that could be the go-to way to discover the user content in the future. Yeah, and maybe Undead can make some presentation in the future about the current state. I'm eager to see. But yeah, this will be probably one of the most important tools that we ever create.
Just to clarify, and that's because this is, again, me being a noob, is GenHub something that's new or going to be released? I'm actually unsure. Yeah, right. Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
It's like a fusion of GenPatcher and Gen Launcher, but unlike Gen Launcher, where there are preset like mods you can download, it will be basically any mod creator can basically create I know this is maybe a little bit old-fashioned for some younger people out there, but like an RSS feed or some sort of like link that people can subscribe to, and that just gets added to the launcher, right? So that way it's completely open.
Got it. Okay, that's super useful. See, yeah, I only know so much. It's really helpful. And in a way, just having the stage and having the discussion is in itself very valuable. So I find that, personally, I find that very helpful.
I can tell you a little bit more about the launcher and how we expect the vision for it to be.
Go for it.
So essentially, in the future, we expect everyone to use this application, we will have a way for delivering content, discovering content, whether it be this Discord, game replay for tournaments, integrating add-ons, mods, downloading different patches if they want to integrate their own patch. So essentially, it will be the hub, the general's hub, uniting everyone and then allowing the user to get whatever content they want. That's our vision for this essential project.
It should be flexible enough that like a tournament organizer can just create like a link for a map pack for their tournament, and then the players just click on the link, and then the launcher just handles it. That's sort of how I see GenHub in the whole ecosystem. It should be the place where everything gets downloaded and managed.
Yeah, as you say, right now that you've obviously got Genpatch, Gentle, XYZ, and where you get all this sort of stuff. As you say, it's different. So having that one place sounds brilliant to me. That's kind of the centralization that is kind of what's desired in the end. And it's given that there's it sounds like everyone's on the same page in that regard, which is obviously very good. Okay.
Well, there can also be like future tools added to make more quality of life. Like for example, lobbies. You can make your own lobby. Discord integration. You can invite someone if you have like a mod. You just share your game profile, like an instance you create from this specific generals, like with patches and add-ons, and then you share that, and then they can just join that exact game because it's just a JSON file with all the data, and then the content delivery system just fetches all the data, and then it creates that instance for you to then launch generals, basically. So it makes it more easier to manage.
Yeah. Brilliant. Quick match is something we want to add on. Yeah, that would be really cool. Would love to see quick match back. The ultimate dream, that one is miss the days. But yeah, all very exciting, obviously, given that everyone wants the same thing at the end of the day, ultimately, which is the enhancement of 0 hour. It's pretty simple, and it's great because we've obviously got a lot of very clever people working on it, which is great, awesome. I'll allow a little bit more time for anyone else has anything in particular they'd want to raise or discuss. But a question, sure, Sam. I'll allow someone else to answer that. Okay.
So,
okay, someone was listening. Sorry, go on, Zezon, after you.
So what are your next steps now in regards to governance?
So yeah, that's probably fair. Just to clarify, the thinking for now is we don't need to implement anything too wild. Especially, I think the key right now is making sure that we improve the communication in a more public setting of the work that is being done, and just making sure, simply because the more information there is, the less likely some people get upset because they might think something's going on that isn't. Obviously, the classic example there is, oh, there's some balancing things when there's no balancing really going on at all, not of a material level anyway. So really, just improving the communication at this stage is the key, and then we're going to allow any sort of we've got ourselves with what I've done is purely just initial ideas. They give us some kind of something to work off in future when inevitably when everything does become bigger, it will. We then have something to sort of an initial grounding to work on where we can say, right, okay, what do we want to do here? There's obviously still many things that need to be decided. For example, if you had a chair, who would that chair be? If you had members, who would those members be? So on and so forth. But for now, we are ultimately going to go down the route of we have the super hackers. So to answer your question, Sam, I mean that is definitely not me. That is, I'd put that as, I mean Zezon's as far as I see it, is the man doing all the work of super hackers. So I would say that's the case. But I think we use that as we've got the super hackers. I think they're doing great work. They're being pretty transparent. I just think, despite them being very transparent, we just need to find a way of making it even more transparent for the more typical person. So that for me is the aim right now, and I'm going to try. Sorry, Xgen, can you repeat your question, please? Apologies, no one's would ever try and ignore here. But yeah, ultimately the aim is to just improve the communication. That's the overall summary, and then further down the line, we can then come back to if we think we need to introduce more committees or some branching committee, then we can do that. But for now, we're not in a position where we need to do that. I don't think. It sounds like it's pretty well controlled by the super hackers group.
From a developer perspective, I think it would be really nice if we would get like a single voice that tells us community says this or that, right, about certain topics, and then maybe let's say community requests this kind of thing, right? Make this change, and then we say, okay, there are these technical implications, maybe not that great. Can you discover if that option would be okay, right? And so that there's like that we just communicate with someone who tells us what community wants, like community outposts would tell us what we want, what they want. And then the developers, they don't need to talk to individual players, right? Because if we talk to players, then players will tell us, hey, I would like to see this, right? And then the developer goes, okay, no problem, I make it happen. But then maybe 99% of the rest of the community doesn't want that, right? So ideally, we have like a voice that feeds us easy information, so that we don't need to engage with all community, because it's just too much, right? If we were to engage with all the communities, it's too much.
Great. All right. Well, rather than one single voice, I propose one small group that assists with that, and I'm happy to put my hand up to help out with that as well.
And I think it should also work the other way around.
Yes.
So this group of people should collect feedback from the community and give that to the devs, but maybe this group of people should also be responsible for, I don't know, maybe through some sort of newsletter or what have you, also give the community an update of, well, you guys have requested this and this is what the developers are delivering, right? A sort of state of dev or some sort of updates that people know what's going on. And that would have to span across all the different efforts going on, which is kind of a lot of work, because there's super hackers, there's of course the generals online, there's a lot of different groups of people who are involved.
Yeah, agreed. Let me just clarify this point 1 second. Go here. Yeah, this is old on analytics. That's kind of the point we were just saying, essentially, which is we'll have a group of people that essentially act as a bridge between the public and super hackers. And as you say, as Zezon says, just trying to make life easier for everyone, improve communication and work the one way, and then on the other way, trying to help the developers so that they're taking as many ideas as possible, whilst also making sure that we don't run away or do something too wild. It's just trying to help everyone here, right? Okay. Let me just quickly review, because there's been loads of comments since. Yeah, so Toby Rama exactly raised the, and that's kind of what we want to try and improve and centralize is just the information. It's super important. Okay. vote. Okay. Anything? Won't be able to comment on that one. Arctic for being very helpful in replying actually to questions, which is most useful. More retail compatibility has significantly improved the ability to track down crashes and other bugs. Yes, that's been really cool actually to see. I've been trying to vaguely keep on top. The rate of discussion in the dev general chat is far outweighs what I'm capable of keeping up with, but I do try to keep on broadly on top of some conversations actually. Okay. Right. Are there any so at this stage, obviously, I'm going to say there's probably two key outcomes then. One is we agree that well, possibly three key outcomes. One is we're not going to implement anything per my initial document as they stand. They might be useful later, but for now we'll park it. The second thing is we agree that we need to improve communication from the sort of super hackers group and what they're doing to the public. And then the third point is we need a small group of people, and I'm willing to help out, and I think there's others as well that are willing to essentially capture the feedback of the community off the back of the communication, the improved communications, and then feeding that back as efficiently as possible to the super hackers so that it can be taken into account with the work they're doing. I think those are the three main things, but I'm willing to be corrected. Okay. I will leave this a little bit. I'll give it a couple more minutes. Anyone else with any other sort of big ticket or questions or key questions? If you have only little things, it's fine. But is there anything major to raise at this stage? Please let us know now. Arctic, actually, just a quick question. If the stage closed, does the chat remain open or does the chat close with it?
Oh, the chat remains open.
That's helpful. Okay. So some people can continue to write a few things, which is very helpful off the back of this.
Oh yeah,
Sam.
just to address Sam's
Yeah,
question.
go for
Well,
it.
the thing is, if we break 1.4 compatibility right away, and for example, you're looking for a game on Game Ranger or Radmin or what have you, it's just going to cause way more problems than the enjoyability it gives you.
Yeah, I'd say that's simply answered. Okay. And just to clarify, if someone was listening back, if I suppose actually, if someone listens back, can they see the conversation?
That all depends on how Lemon is handling the recording. I imagine he has parts of the chat.
That's fine. That's fine. Let's work with that. But just in case it doesn't, the question there was why do we need to keep 1.04 compatibility? And yeah, Arctic's just given the answer there. Old Analytics just making a very useful point, which I will read out. One thing from my side. If you have any questions about, address them to us. And just to clarify, by us, I think Old Analytics refers to Generals Online there. Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh, Vodka's such a joker. He doesn't even have a microphone. He
Yeah.
says.
So I was just. I know. I'm well aware. It's quite funny. I knew that. It's good to bring a tiny bit of comedy into this. Let's see. Sam Puckett has asked, what's with all the upper ups ignoring the mod community even up to this day? This has been the issue since the super patch days, where the majority of the devs won't cooperate with the modding community and instead they mostly stick with the PvP crowd of game replays, which mostly consist of the 1% of the community. Arctic or Zezon, I suppose, probably best placed to have a go at answering that.
Maybe he can elaborate maybe on the question.
No problem. That's fine. Maybe then that is probably a question more for. I'll allow that. If that stays within the chat, we'll keep that off as it is quite an important point actually. But I think that question can also be answered via the chat as well. So that's fine. We can allow that to be the case.
I mean, I don't know what you mean by upper ups, right? Because at the end of the day, the way I see the current state of super hackers is that there's no one person taking decisions. In the end, it's all everybody bringing points up for discussion. So if anybody in the modding communities has specific ideas that should be in the engine or something like that, I mean, at the end of the day, mods are mods, and the community patch is also a mod of sorts. So, yeah, I don't quite understand what you're trying to say, because everybody has more or less equal say in the current state of affairs.
So the super patch or general's game patch or community patch, whatever you want to call it, the data side of things, the data is not a substitute or replacement for things like Shockwave or Rise of the Reds. It's not related really. So like these projects, they could cherry pick ideas or things that we do, but it's unlikely because they probably already have a lot of things in place that make the game a better experience in their own way, right? So like these are different things. So the data side of things, it's catered towards the original game. So it's meant to fix and improve the original game. It's not meant to introduce new units or new abilities and things like this. It's just like the core game with the same factions, the same units, the same upgrades, the same general's powers, everything is the same, just without the junk, right? So fix the bugs and fix any serious gameplay problems, any like technical issues in models and textures and sounds and so on. Like just polish the game. That's really the aim of this. And obviously, like historically, there have been like disagreements on certain topics, but also a lot of agreements on many topics. Like there are topics that all the people can agree on, and there are topics that there might not be 100% alignment, right? But that's the case, and that was part of our conversation today. There are these controversial topics, and so the current plan is to roll back a bunch of these controversial things that we had added to main branch in the past, so that it's a bit cleaner, and then reevaluate certain things as we see fit. But currently we are not focusing on data, we are focusing on code right now, because that is the top priority, to get hold of all the crashes and bigger bugs and memory problems and so on. And once we are happy with code, then we can go back to data and figure out what we want to do there. But there are many things that are clear cut, like everyone can agree on, and some things that are controversial, and this is where the governance would be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Obviously, this is an interesting thread actually, which is a lot of discussion happening in the chat on this as well. Might even need a specific thread in its own right. But yeah, I think it's Leggie's making a fair point. Ultimately, we it's the community's aim to be integrated and to try and be as helpful as possible. I don't think anyone would ever neglect something deliberately. It can obviously feel ultimately the point people raise, they'll feel a certain way.
I can
But
give
raising the point is half the battle.
I can give an example of what Sam probably like the kinds of he refers to. So, for example, there was a discussion topic about adding a reverse gear for China supply trucks. Just a discussion, no actual change proposal, just like discussing the possibility of adding reverse gear to the supply trucks so that they wouldn't drive crazy in circles when taking money and dropping money, but just driving in reverse, and then they would be quicker and less pain with China economy, right? And so mod developers were very fond of this, and probably because they also have it already implemented in some mods and it probably works just fine, right? But like players like Dominator, for example, they were not so fond of this idea, right? Rightfully or not rightfully, that is difficult to answer, but they were not so fond because they think it's just the way it is, and the supply trucks, they have no reverse gear, they only drive forward. Yeah. Chinese driver only goes forward. So and then like, because it's a controversial topic, and that's the problem, like you won't find easy consensus over topics like these. Some people are of this opinion and others of this, and like it's hard to like say what is right or wrong, because like the original game is the status quo, and that's sort of like the rule of law, right? The way it is.
Yeah.
Right, because that's what EA shipped in the rushed state it is. It's full of bugs, right? And so this is a go-to design, and that's why I said it actually would be really helpful if we had John Day or whatever his name is, like calling some shots as to like, yeah, you should not do this or you should do that, because that would be an authority figure that would be very hard to argue against. Like if some random guy comes along and says, yeah, it doesn't matter what the original game designer says, most people would agree he's out of his mind, right? This person that worked on the original Generals knows well much better what is a good design and not. But in the end, it's also something that, like, in some things, I think it's good to like really study and look deeply into. And I'm not sure if everyone really does that when exploring a certain topic, right? So like, I think it's maybe not so easy to explore certain designs from the get-go, because there can be a lot of intricacies with certain things, right? And like you first need to study like how a lot of mechanics work to maybe come up with like a good design or a good solution to something. And if you don't engage with these kinds of things, it's also hard to give like a really good opinion on certain things, right? So like, yeah, you can gather the player opinion, but it doesn't mean that all the expert player opinions are the best design decision or the best direction, right? Like it could be, but it could also not be, right? So it's really complicated to find the right decisions.
Yeah, agreed. As you say, that's kind of what the type of thing that ultimately led to the idea of having this discussion in the first place. But yes, I think it sounds like it might go down more a route of balance, which itself also comes later, as Leggie's pointed out in chat.
I also feel like a lot of people are bringing up that a certain group of people or somebody or whatever is dictating X, Y, or Z. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think part of the philosophy of GenHub, at least from the way I see it, is that at the end of the day, if somebody wants to make their own engine change and is willing to put resources behind it, or find resources that are willing to help them to make such a change, I mean, nobody's standing in their way, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we're not like we're not forcing anybody to develop code against their will, right? That's also something to bear in mind, right? So if somebody has a good idea and you feel like you can get people behind this idea, like by all means go for it.
Yeah.
From my perspective.
I think that's sensible. It kind of comes back to your point earlier, doesn't it, about having opinions, and then if you take your scrap.nl example, we're saying, oh, you put an option in, and then eventually the community decides it. It all comes back down to that. Or then, if they want to do something different, there's a say in theory they can do that, but it won't be centralized at least. Okay. That point, I think, can continue via a conversation. I think Sam, I'm sure, will want to. Sam Puckett will want to continue that at some point, either in here or thread. Absolutely fine. Are there any other points that anyone else wanted to bring at this point?
I just want to say again that from us developers, there is a strong desire to fix all the junk that there's in the game, right? To leave no stone unturned, fix all. Like most of the fixes, I'm just making up numbers. So let's say like 90% of things, they are things that are just like fixes without any controversial aspect, and we want to fix all this shit, right?
Yeah.
But there will be things that are controversial, and of course we still want to fix these things, but we need to be considerate about certain things because they are not. It's like you will make someone unhappy if you do it this way or another way. That's just the way it is. So you need to be considerate about these things. And a good strategy here is, as I said earlier, to allow the community to opt in and opt out of fixes. And I think that's key. When there is a controversial thing, make it configurable in a way, unless it's really clear cut and we can agree that, this is a thing that should definitely be fixed. But there are many things, and you would be surprised at the level of things. Like, for example, scut bug. It affects gameplay, but everyone agrees scut bug should be fixed. There's no one that says that scut bug should remain as a feature and should be an opt-in fix. No, scut bug is something that should be fixed. Same as like evacuating things from a tunnel scaffold. Like no one wants to see these kinds of things, right?
Completely agreed.
But some things we need to be considerate and listen to what the players say and try to find a way through the governance. I mean, it needs to be somewhere. Like either the governance, is just like a single body, like community outpost, or it is broader. And if it's broader, then it can capture more opinions across all the communities. And so there probably is. It probably is a case that governance will be important in some way or another if people engage with this thing in good faith, right?
Absolutely. And that's fine. I think that's fine. That's where we'll and I'd say that was one of the three outcomes, right? Which is to have the sort of single voice that you asked for to feed back to you, and obviously then improving the public communications. That becomes our feedback loop. Which obviously, let's say I'm one of the people willing to help out. I know there's several people that have already messaged saying they'd also be willing to help out with that. And as long as we get that in between right, then I think we'll end up in a really good place here. And certainly, as I said earlier, having something that some ability to sort of capture all of those things you mentioned, Zezon, and trying to highlight, making sure we highlight the ones that are most controversial, what we do with them, and making sure we're communicating them to the community, making sure we capture that feedback, and then most importantly, of course, making sure that gets back to you. And then if something gets implemented and too many people then don't like it, it's fine because you can fix it further down the line. And I agree with you. That's the one bit of the sort of governance or structure that we want to try and get here. I think that's what we're aiming for. Okay. Is there? Yeah, exactly that. And that's the point. N5P29. It's a case of just making sure that we recognize that although something is a bug, actually that bug could be sort of has become a feature. And then it obviously links into the whole opt-in, opt-out concept that people were talking about earlier as well. Okay. Final call in this case. Any other particular key points related to the original document? I think at this stage I'll just very quickly remind everyone or highlight the sort of 3 key outcomes. Outcome 1, no adoption initially, at least, of what my original Word document was doing. Number 2, improving public communications from what super hackers are doing to everyone else. And outcome 3, making sure that there's a single voice that, or at least a small group of voices that are capturing feedback following improved public communications back to the developer group, so that they can utilize that information and make their life easier. But okay, I think at this point, I'll allow. There'll obviously be a conversation or the thread that continues anyway. But unless there's anything, something big that someone wants to highlight or raise at this point, then what I will probably say is thank you everyone for getting involved and tuning in. It's been super helpful. I've certainly gained a lot from this, and I think in the end we'll end up in a really, really, really good place. Zezon, thank you obviously for your heavy input, and Arctic as well. Thank you for setting up this stage as well. I really appreciate that. And everyone else, thank you for joining in. I would say really, really useful in the chat. For those that are joining the chat as well, guys like Leggy, Mauler, and a few others, been giving a lot of answers. I really appreciate that as well. But yeah, if there's any other questions, people obviously after this can ask it to this group as well. Okay, yeah, pleasure, Leggy. Thank you. Yeah, as I say, guys, I'll close it out there. But thank you very much for your time, and we'll try and get some sort of extra information out in due course. Yeah, thanks everyone, and see you all soon.